so this is just going to be a quick introduction to Typescript development with Vue.js Electron. Okay, so the main purpose is it's going to be live coding, so if you guys want to follow along on your computers, you're free to do so. The main selling point, the initial selling point of the talk is going to be to show how the Vue CLI plugins make our life much easier. I'm going to be using the plugin to actually start a project that's going to be using the Electron builder to actually build the Electron application. Everything is going to be using TypeScript, so if you have any experience with Vue and TypeScript, you're going to know that you have to use TypeScript decorators to use strongly typed Vue components. And I'm going to focus quite a bit on test-driven development. So we're going to be discussing techniques on how to properly test your application, your Vue components. And that's going to involve some things like, if your application uses external APIs, you probably should be talking to the real external API in your tests. You're going to be mocking that external API. And in the example of this trivia game, we have to, after the user answers the question, we're going to wait 1 second before the next question is loaded. Your test suite should not wait 1 second, right, before the next question is loaded. So we're going to also be mocking the time being elapsed. And the heart of the tests is going to be Vue test utils with Jest, right? So for people that are more experienced with like front-end test development, you'll probably know that there is like a very common alternative to Jest that is Mocha in combination with Chai. Mocha is very good as well, especially because you can have your own custom webpack linked to the test that's going to actually bundle the application before the test runs. But Jest is a great way to just quickly get going with your test, and Jest comes with a pretty large library of like support functions for your tests. So we don't have to bring other libraries like sign-on or to mock stuff. We can just use what Jest brings to us. Okay, so and as Morgan was explaining earlier, this is going to be a trivia game, so we have to load trivia questions. And this is a very cool repo that I want to share with you guys. I don't know who did this, but it's just a collection of public APIs. Can I bring this in here? And so it's just public APIs. You don't need actually authentication to do it, to go over it. And one of those guys is trivia questions. So it's just an easy API. You talk to that endpoint, and it returns some trivia questions for you. Okay, so we're gonna be using that too. I also want to, just to make sure that everyone is like connected to the talk, I made a brief gist where I explain the key concepts. So feel free to access this gist Huh? Yes, I know that. So that's why I also created an alias. So if you go to kwjs.philipflow.com, you're going to be redirected to that huge URL. So it's just to make your life easier. So if you go to kwjs.philipflow.com.
Sorry, man. What's the Wi-Fi here?
Oh, it's Friends. Yeah. So I just. I'm not sure what's the public Wi-Fi.
Great question. I should have said earlier. Sorry about that.
I don't think there's a password here.
Yeah, so if you look for FEN_friends, you should be able to knock it.
Okay. So yeah, so you just go to kwjs.philipflow.com and you should have access to the gist. And okay, so I'm gonna go to the live coding now because the whole shtick is going to be like, hey, here's like pretty cool. You can actually get going very fast with writing your Vue Electron app, right? So just gonna show. Oh, sorry. kwjs.philipflow, as in my name.
I know, but I think I typed it right, but it's not all.
Let's see. So if I go into KW, JS, I think that is wrong. And it redirects to the gist.
Right?
Yeah. KWJS dot Philippe flow. Yes, is my latest commit in there. Just a little gist that should have the description there. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know why it works in here.
It worked for me.
Oh, it worked for you? Okay, so I really.
Okay, I finally got it.
So what
It
you.
was taking way too long to redirect.
Really?
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay.
So I don't know.
So the redirect is not actually happening in my server, it's happening on the DNS side, so I don't know why that's happening. Yeah, I wonder. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go with the live coding, all right? So what I'm gonna show to you guys is just this. Let's make the thing bigger. Can you guys see all right? So I'm gonna go in here, it's just gonna go to code, and let's go to Electron. Okay, so for those of you that are not familiar, Vue has a very interesting tool to scaffold projects quickly, which is the Vue CLI. So if you do Vue create, again, if you go to the gist, I have the link to where you can see how to install the Vue CLI. But you can do Vue create, and you can specify your project name. So let's just go like KWJS video. And the CLI is going to open the questions to like, hey, what you want to have in your project. So I'm going to manually select that I want Typescript, and I want to use a CSS, and I want to have unit testing to this project. Because I selected the unit testing part, they're going to ask me whether I want to use Vulcan plus Chai or if I want to use Jest. And as I was explaining earlier, I'm going to be using Jest instead. Vulcan and Chai is also completely valid, but I personally have a preference for Jest because it brings more to the table. That the Vue CLI suggests, yes, but you can definitely put up your own project with Jasmine or whatever you prefer manually, but the CLI doesn't offer those options yet. And so as this thing is happening, I'm gonna be showing you guys. You can add plugins to your project. So a plugin is pretty much, as the name implies, it's going to bring some functionality into your project, like without requiring much work on your part. You can add plugins via the CLI by using the add command. But I want to show another really cool thing that the Vue CLI brings to you, that is the Vue UI from the CLI. So this is kind of interesting. If you call the Vue UI in here, you're going to see that it's going to put up in the browser a mini server that is the Vue project manager. So this is actually a thing that I've learned on the Laravel before the previous one when Avenue was showing that. And all you have to do is import your recently created project. So you can see over here, KWJS preview is being suggested as the import because that's the folder I'm in right now. So let's import this folder. And there we go. So we have like a nice dashboard to manage our plugins, right? So let's see over here. Okay, so you can see that we have the Typescript plugin and the unit test plugin attached to this project. But we want to add another plugin, right? So what do we want to add? We want to add Electron. So you can see that the most popular plugin with like almost 14 times more downloads than the second place is this Vue CLI plugin Electron Builder, and that's the one we want to use. Vue CLI plugin Electron Builder, let's just wait for it to resolve.
Does it like run in the background?
Yeah, exactly. It should start everything for us.
Okay, so where do you get errors or anything, something is wrong? Some version content whatever happens. How do you see the output of it?
So I think it's going to be better than if I show you the package JSON after the quick test. So, and I just want to show you guys that I'm not going to be using a Spectrum in here. Spectrum is an end-to-end test framework for Electron. And the reason why I'm not going to be doing end-to-end testing here is that the test for inspection take a while to start. The test during development is going to be done with unit and feature tests over Jest and Vue test utils. Okay, so just let it build. While the thing is building, I'm also going to, I'm going to open another tab in here because I'm going to be using PHP Storm for that. Even though the name implies as if PHP Storm is only good for PHP, it's actually pretty good with Vue as well. So just going to go in there, and it's going to be KWJS.
Can you make font bigger?
Yeah. So it's just going to open PHP Storm in here real quick. And the rest of the work is going to be done over PHP Storm. So let's just see if the UI has finished building. And yeah, and you can see we're even going through the drove of like, hey, you should probably commit your changes. So whatever, let's just say install Electron. Okay. Okay, so at this point, if we take a look at PHP Storm, this is the package JSON that we have. So we can see over here, Electron is being installed, and the Electron builder itself is a Vue CLI plugin. Okay. So just a personal preference. This is not actually necessary for this talk, but I really prefer to use double quotes on my thing. And just so you guys know as well, like we're going to be using fixtures pretty soon on the tests. And if you want to import JSON fixtures into your tests and you're using Typescript, you need to have both the ES module interrupts that's gonna bring like the helpers for import star imports and G4 imports from ECMAScript, and you also have to bring this guy, resolve JSON modules. I'm not gonna get into too much details about that, but in TypeScript you have to declare the modules, and you can declare those modules with the .t.ts files like this. So you see, like this is a file that declares that every single file that ends with .vue is a Vue module. So if you add that configuration into your JS config, you're just bypassing the necessity of creating a declaration file for JSON by simply setting a flag to true. So it's just easier that way. So I'm just gonna do in here like a quick. Let's just call this.
Have you built a test to see if it is faster? The result doesn't like hinder the rendering of the application that much.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Resolving the Vue like modules.
Oh no, that's a good point. I haven't done that. Like, but yeah, that's a good. I wonder if that's make like a significant difference. But I haven't compared the two approaches. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to show you guys. Like, you can see further details of that into the gist that I shared. But an Electron app has a background process. This is where the interactions with the OS are going to be happening. So if you're trying to open a file in the OS, it should be the background process that's going to be actually fetching that file or opening the dialog to actually select the file. And the render process is going to be what actually renders the UI. So it's your web app. The render process and the background process can communicate using the IPC support classes. IPC standing for inter-process communication. But in the case of this app, we're not going to be touching that. But I do mention them in the gist that I shared earlier. Okay, so I'm just going to demonstrate. So if you run yarn, it should just see that there is nothing to install because the plugin installed everything. So if I run yarn electron serve, it should start the Electron in development mode, which effectively it's going to be a small web window, this guy over here. And you can see that we even have the developer tools that we use to see. This thing keeps showing me to my first screen. The developer tools that we use to see, like when we're writing web apps, right? And this is the cool thing as well, that since we're going to be working with Vue, I want to have access to the Vue developer tools. That's very simple as well. So if you go to the background process, one of the responsibilities of the background process is also initiating the browser. So you can see over here that one of the things that we can do is install Vue DevTools into our browser if we are in development mode. So that's what I'm doing here. Also, I'm going to run the video on this file because, yeah, it was driving me crazy. Okay, so let's just restart that. And okay,
how did you restart Electron?
so the Electron serve has a watch with how to reload, so it refreshes for you as soon as you make any changes to the JavaScript. Okay, so as you can see over here, we now have the Vue testing tools, and it's.
So in React, if you wanted to hot plug in, you'll have to do special changes to your code so that you can do hot plug.
I see.
With Vue, there is no
So
setup that you have to do.
So as far as so they have the hot reload by default. I believe that if you want to disable that, there has to be a way for you to do it, and it's probably like if we're using Vue plugins, you can set configuration options. So all you have to do is just create a vue.config.js, the root folder of the project, and the plugins read that file before actually running. So that's how you can set up custom configurations to the plugins. That's it. All right. So this is a funny thing. So the Vue developer tools from the Electron browser is a little bit buggy. Like sometimes it actually doesn't detect the components. But from personal experience, I found that if you close the developer tools and open them back again, they should find the components right there. So there you go. So now we have a fully working Vue Electron app with access to developer tools while we're running in development mode. All right. Okay. So let's just get going. Right? I'm just gonna make like a small commit in here. That's gonna be install developer tools. Let's look at Vue developer tools. Okay. Commit. All right. So now here comes the TGG approach, right? I'm gonna delete the hello world app. Like let's just remove the clutter. We don't need this. We need this. And okay, so we have like a pretty empty application. And what I want to do is I want to be able to display a question to the user. And what's the format of this question? So this is where we need to look into the API that we're actually using. So the OpenTree API. So this OpenTree API is just a very cool public API that you can. It sends to you trivia questions. In this case, I'm using base64 encoding just so I can bypass problems with special characters. Because some of these questions are like math questions, so it has like some special characters in there. But I'm just gonna show to you guys how this thing looks. So in PHP Storm, if you do Command-Shift-N, you're gonna open a Scratch file, which is pretty much just an in-memory file. It's not gonna be saved in your computer. And this is great if I just want to take a quick look into a thing. So this is a JSON payload, right? So this is the JSON payload that comes from that API. And you can see here, they have like a response code of 0, and then they have results, and they have like an array of those things. And you can see that this thing has like a question, it has like a correct answer, and an array of incorrect answers. So this seems to be like this is the trigger question itself, right? So because we're using TypeScript, we can create an interface that's going to represent this. So the rest of the application knows what to expect from that API. So this is what we're going to be doing, right?
That
So-
response code is always 0?
So this is from the trivia question API itself. Like every time that I've talked to it, it was 0. I'm assuming it follows the standard of like a CLI execution that returns 0 if it's successful, and any number that is not 0 if it
So we
failed.
can depend on that to make sure that trigger is successful.
That, yeah, we can. Or like, in the case of this talk, I'm gonna be relying on the HTTP code. Like if it's from the 200 family, I'm gonna expect the thing to be a successful. Okay, so let's just go with the test, right? And as you can see over here, we have a tests folder with one example unit testing here. I'm not gonna look into the example test just so we can go from scratch. And this test, it's going to be for the, let's call that like a trivia question component. So it's just trivia question.spec.js. And because we're using jest, we're gonna be starting this test with a describe. So what are we describing? We are describing the trivia question component, right? So trivia question. All right, and inside of the describe, you're gonna, like the second argument is a callback. And in here, we're gonna have a series of things of like, hey, how can we describe these trivia questions? So let's just say it renders a prompt for a given trivia. All right, so,
Easy minute.
oh yeah, got it, sorry. Is that better? Yeah. So it renders a prompt for a given trivia. Okay, so, because like the idea is, you want your test suite to tell a story of what are the responsibilities of that component, right? Like it's when I go to a code that I have no idea what's going on, I usually look into the tests first, because that's usually a nice way to see a description of what is the responsibility of each component in that test, in that program. So okay, so the trivia question is to render a prompt for a given trivia, right? Okay, so how we're gonna do that? So we're gonna be using Vue test utils for that. So let's instantiate that Vue component into this test, right? So this is a unit test, so we only care about this component. So let's just have like it's common practice to call the instantiated Vue test utils wrapper as wrapper. If you look into the Vue test utils docs, that's how they call it. So it's gonna be a wrapper. So I'm just typing into this, like it's a wrapper of that component. And that's where I usually like to make a stub in here, because PHP Storm can automatically import that component for me. So I will still be respecting the idea of test-driven development, because this component is not going to be doing anything to begin with. So I'm just going to create in here, let's create a trivia question component. So a trivia question Vue component. And what does this guy have? So for anyone that is used with Vue, you know that you have to have a template. Let me increase the size. So you have to have a template. Let's just make this template like an empty div. And you have to have a script, right? So this is like pretty much like the bare minimum that you're gonna have. But we are using TypeScript. So a small change in relation to the Vue component that you're used to is that we're gonna be specifying a language in here. And we're gonna have to use the decorators. So I'm just gonna bring that component decorator and the Vue decorator from Vue property decorator. And the way you define an empty component is just by doing that. You export a default class of that component trivia question, and that guy needs to extend the Vue from the decorator. And there we go. So we have a component that doesn't do anything. Switch. And I'm going to be testing this guy, right? So let's just go in here, and this guy is going to be a wrapper of trivia question. And the Vue test utils has two types of mount. There is the method, there is the function called mount, and there is the function called shallow mount. Shallow mount is going to stub out every single child component within that guy. And mount is actually going to render the real children component as far as it goes. So if you do a full mount of your app, everything is going to be real. I have an approach that if it's a unit test, I should probably be using shallow mount. I have to have a really good reason to be using mount. This is a unit test. It only pertains to this component. I'm just going to do a shallow mount, and I'm going to assume that the children are doing their job properly. In a feature test, I'm going to be using mount. So I'm just going to do a shallow mount of the trivia question component. And as the test description explains, this component is expected to receive props, and the props data that I'm expected to receive is a trivia, right? And for those that are used with ECMAScript, like trivia, key trivia with the value of trivia can be shorthanded into just trivia. And okay, so what is going to be the trivia, right? So what is this trivia guy? It's going to be one of those questions. And so we probably should have the interface defined at this point, because we want to be respecting that interface. It's very common in TypeScript projects to have a folder called types. So let's just go like directory types. And this guy over here is going to have a file called index.js, where all the types are going to be exported from. And then for each interface, you're going to have its own file. So I'm going to create a file called iTrivia. If you look into Microsoft coding standards, they preface their interfaces with I. It's a common practice. So I'm going to be following that in this project. So iTrivia. Okay, so what is the trivia interface? Let's just expand this. Export interface iTrivia. So what does this guy have? If we check the JSON over here, so let's just collapse everything, expand this, and split the screen in half, and go back to our interface. All right, so we have a category, type, difficulty, question. So let's mention those things in here. So I'm just going to select all those things, come back over here, paste that in here, and okay. So what are those things, right? Is that one of those? Oh, Jesus Christ, that's one. Okay, so is that one of those guys strings? No, because we have incorrect answers, which is a string array. So I'm just going to mention that in here. So I expect everything to be a string except incorrect answers, which is a string array. Okay, so this is like a very simple interface, right? And then best practice dictates that this guy over here is responsible for. So this is the index for the types. So index should be exporting every single type that is defined into the other files. So I'm going to export everything from iTrivia, right? And there you go. So in the idea. What do you mean?
Like export anonymous every file that is in this directory.
Oh, you mean like doing like this?
Yeah. And we don't have to do it per file.
But it's TypeScript is complaining that it doesn't know what this module is.
I'll look it up.
But I would love to know. Yeah, like.
I remember reading something about that.
Okay, this would be huge. I would love to learn that. Yeah, like being able to use wildcards into the exports, that would be sweet. Okay, we created that interface, right? So let's just enforce this in here. So we know that this guy needs to follow iTrivia. And this is the cool thing about, okay, just close. Okay, so this is the cool thing about TypeScript, right? Because now your entire application is going to need to follow this. This code won't compile until this variable obeys the interface that I defined. So you can even see over here, if I hover over this guy, there we go, we're missing parameters, right? Whoopsie daisy. Okay, so I can just press Option Enter if you're using PHP Storm, implement all missing members, and there we go. It's going to stub out all the missing members from that interface. And let's just make up some things in here. So let's just say the category is going to be movies. The correct answer is going to be the correct answer. The difficulty is going to be hard. Incorrect answer is going to be incorrect answer number 1. And then we're going to have 2 more. And then the question is, what is this test question? Right? Type is going to be multiple choice. Okay. So technically, we don't have enough time for that, but type and category should be enums. Let's just, like, to simplify things, let's just say that those are strings, and you have to tell them everywhere.
Philippe, are you going to have any problem with the comma after the correct answer 3?
No, training commas is actually, so I even think that the linter enforces training commas, so I'm gonna run the linter in this file.
Okay.
And you can see that it actually enforces it. It actually added training comma to this part over here. Like I'm gonna remove the training comma, and I'm gonna run the linter again, and the comment is back. So yeah, the linter rule. Huh? It's the S6 stance? Okay, so there you go. Like, if you didn't have the training comma, it would still compile. Like, it would still be fine, but just so you know. Okay, so we're passing this trivia question, and then again, like, what is this test testing? We should see the prompt with from the given trivia, right? So how do we read that? So we expect, like, ideally your test should read like English, like it's the person doesn't need to know details about like how jest works. So what do we expect? So we expect, hey, wrapper. You could say like, need to like, hey, wrapper. I want the text of that wrapper to contain trivia.question. This is a valid test already. So this would run and it would say like, hey, I expect to see the question in that component. You can be more specific though. Like I could say like, hey, I expect this thing to be contained within a prompt class. I'm just being more specific. So you have to find within prompt the text that contains the actual prompt of the question. Cool. So if I run this test, for anyone that uses, so just so you know, if you want to run the test, you can do yarn test unit if you want to. In here, yarn test unit. And it should run the test, and it should fail because we don't have the feature. So there you go. We failed because it couldn't find anything with the class of prompt. So that's how we failed. And our components doesn't have that, so that's an expected failure. I'm going to be using PHP Storm to run the tests as opposed to the CLI because I feel like it's easier to understand what's going on. So if you're using PHP Storm, they have templates in here, and I'm going to use the Jest template. And the Jest package is going to be the one from the CLI service. And the configuration file is the one that is in the root folder. Apply that, and I'm just going to create one that's going to be called all tests. If anyone is curious about that, I can talk more about that later, like one-on-one. But I'm not going to lose too much time learning how to configure your PHP Storm, because not everyone here uses PHP Storm. But there you go. So now I can actually run in here, and the tests are going to have like a nice, fancy UI, and it's going to look pretty awesome when we start getting like a bunch of green checks.
What do you mean by prompt? Find the prompt.
What I meant by prompt is actually the question itself. I don't like to call it that question because the question object has the question and has the answers. So what I meant by prompt is like, who discovered America? That string is what I'm calling the prompt at this moment.
So if you don't use prompt, how the trivia question runs? If you don't use prompt, because before you showed that it failed on the prompt.
Oh, so if I was like taco salad in here, so it's gonna say, hey, I couldn't find any like, do not find .taco salad. Like it's not gonna find a div or any HTML elements that has the class. So you can replace it for whatever you want. It just needs to be, yeah, there you go. You could not find anything on taco salad. So I'm just gonna go in here and I'm gonna mention prompt again. And we have to make that as pass, right? So it's the whole red-green refactor. So I'm just going to go to the Vue component real quick. And personal style, I like to have the top div with kind of the name of the Vue component. So it's a trivia question in here. And this guy is going to have a guy called prompt. And in here, we want to show the prompt from the question, right? So again, like we know that we're going to need props. And because we're using TypeScript, this prop has to come from the decorator. So let's just say like, hey, this prop is required. It's going to be private, so other classes can't have access to it. And I'm going to call this trivia, and this guy is going to follow the interface of iTrivia. So I'm expecting to receive a trivia as a prop in this component. And what I'm going to be doing in here is that this div is going to have a vtext of trivia.question. Okay? So we render the question to this screen. So let's just refresh the test, see if we pass with what we have so far. And we do. So there we go. So we have a passing test. if we offer a prop called trigger that respects the iTrigger interface, we should see the question within an HTML element that has the class of prompt. This is what the test is asserting, and this is what we are achieving. So we got the first test to pass. So I'm just gonna make it here, and then we'll say display prompt from a given question. All right, so what would be another typical responsibility of this component? Let's say each renders a button for each possible answer of a given trigger, okay? All right, so we expect to see a button for each possible answer of a trigger. All right, so how are we gonna do this? So this is where, because we're gonna be mounting this component with the same trigger questions on multiple tests, to prevent code repetition, we could use the before each. For those that come from like PHP, this is the same thing as like setup. So this is going to run before all the tests. And what I want to do in this before each is going to be to actually mount the wrapper. So I'm just going to define wrapper in here. So it's going to be a wrapper of trigger question. And this mount now is going to happen on the before each. So I'm just going to move this thing over here. The definition of the constant of trigger, I'm going to move outside of the test. There's no need to keep instantiating that. And let's just say wrapper equals the shallow match of trigger. And let's run the loop in here. Okay, so we have a wrapper, and there we go. So now, and this is the cool thing as well, because now the test switch is much more concise. If you want to see the requirement of the first test, it's right there. It's like the first test is literally one line of code. We expect the question to bring in a guy that has the class of prompt. There you go. So, okay, so we expect to see a button for each possible answer of that trigger. All right, so this is going to be a little bit more tricky, right? Because, so what are all the possible answers that we have? So let's just say like possible answers. So this guy is a string array, right? So what are those? Those are going to be all the incorrect answers together with the correct answer, right? Like we're always going to be like all those answers together represent the possible answers. And now, like again, like the software development is like an art, right? Like there is no right way to implement a test. You can do it in multiple ways. What I'm going to be doing here, like I guess we could have one expectation that makes sure that I see a certain amount of buttons in there that matches the amount of possible answers in length. And I can also expect to see the buttons with the contents in there. So I personally, I don't like to have my production code having changes to it only because of tests. But in this talk, I'm going to open this exception because I want to show you guys one thing really cool that you can do with your test utils. So just hang on with me. Like, because the idea is going to be, I want to make sure that I'm going to see one button for every single possible answer and make sure that the content of that button matches exactly the answer that I want. Okay? So how are we going to do that?
Isn't that true though, if you modify from the cycle test?
Sorry?
But you're basically saying this is what it is, this is what it should be, so it is what it is.
Oh, no. Okay, so I expressed myself wrong. Like the test is not going to be modifying stuff. I'm going to be adding metadata to the front end that the test is going to be using. Okay? Like effectively, what I want to show you guys, it's just that like it's just going to be like a button, and it's gonna have a thing called like content. That's going to be whatever, right? Like it's going to be this. Because the selector doesn't actually, there isn't a selector in Vue test utils that actually fetches by text.
Oh.
Yeah. React testing library can do that. Vue test utils cannot. So I'm going to be using the content metadata for that. Yep.
Maybe you're working up to this. I don't mean to anticipate the question, but it seems to me you've also got to do a little bit of randomizing in there to make sure that the correct answer isn't always the last answer. That's what I'm seeing in the code there.
Okay, so
Because
this
you've
is,
got an array of all the wrong answers and then the right answer. And you obviously don't want the right answer to be the last
to be the
one.
last, yeah,
Right,
so
nobody's gonna figure that out.
this is a very, very good point. I had to write a test that involved randomization before, and I personally, I feel like I prefer to go with like the dependency inversion idea of the whoever needs to randomize stuff needs to receive a randomizer, and then my test can have like a viced randomizer, like a randomizer that I enforce the randomizer to return a thing in a certain way, and I just test to expect that that component is going to be following whatever the randomizer is specified. The thing that I was talking about was like a dice throwing game, and so the game itself received a dice factory that like followed like the idea of received a random number generator factory, because then in my test I could inject a fake factor into the thing, and I would say like, hey, you're gonna return 2, 5, and 3, and then I would see how the thing behaves. Because as soon as you're using real randomness in your test, things can get really tricky, right? Every time you run the test, it's gonna be something different.
And that's also against separation of concerns, because there's one concern of whether we can produce random things, and there's another concern whether what we provided is going to be that.
Yeah,
So they shouldn't be mixed in one test.
exactly, yeah, switch. But yeah, but this is a really good point. Like, I decide not to focus on that on this talk because I feel like time is really short as it is.
Good start.
But like, no. I love the fact that you brought that up. It's definitely a 100% like real concern in software development, right? Like it's very tricky, and especially like, for example, when we're as soon as we get into feature testing and we're going to be talking to the API, right? And the API, like, I'm going to be loading a fixture that's going to respect the same standards of the API, but you don't know exactly how the external API is going to be responding every time, right? So the fact that you're using a fake in your tests can be causing the side effect of not actually being reflecting reality, right? So it's like the compromise between having cohesive, fast-running tests and possibly having tests that don't reflect reality.
I've got no problem with the idea of just doing it the way it is there and then leaving that as an exercise for the student to figure out how to do the randomizing.
That's true, yeah.
I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Oh, yeah. Well, like what I mentioned with the content thing was just actually literally adding a content metadata in here, but I'm gonna get that one. So we have the possible answers, right? So this is what I managed to wanted to tell you guys. So I can say like, hey, for each possible answer, so like possible answer, say string. So for each possible answer, what do I want to expect from this thing? So I want to expect wrapper.find, and now find receives a CSS selector. So you can put like whatever you want. So I'm gonna say I will expect a button that has a content that matches the content from the possible answer. So I'm gonna have to use template strings in here. If you guys are not familiar with JavaScript template strings, you just literally just put backticks in there, and then you bring in the $, and there you go. You can put a JavaScript variable inside of the same. So I'm just gonna say here, like, hey, the content needs to match possible answer. And all I want to assert in here is that it renders a button for that. So the only concern of this test is that, like, hey, this button needs to exist. And there we go. This is all I care about. Hey, I hope you have a button for every single possible answer. Yeah.
Wouldn't it look better to write this as a separate function called contains?
Yeah, that could work too.
Wrapper that contains.
Yeah, that's like because it's this button in here.
You can make that into a syntax trigger
Mm-hmm.
where find button context with that becomes wrapper contains this feature.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's gonna do that. But then we're not gonna be able to do this nice change of like saying like this guy takes a wrapper and it's gonna return a boolean. And what this guy is gonna do, it's gonna be the wrapper gonna find this thing over here. That definitely is an approach, right? Like you say, like expected call.
Yeah.
Context of string, and then it's gonna be this wrapper that's pointing here.
And then that would be expected to contact.
Yeah.
Is that anything else or it should be
Oh, yeah, okay. So yeah, effectively it's gonna be then extraction this whole line as in expect contains that, right? As in like, expect contains what's the answer? Yeah, that's 100% feasible, but reasonable. Yeah, it is better, right? Like so for each possible answer, expect contains possible answer. Yeah.
The CSS selector should have a closing bracket.
Sorry?
The button contents should have a closing right
Thank you.
bracket.
Yes, that was an error. Thank you. Yeah, this wouldn't be a valid CSS selector because I was missing the closing bracket. Okay, so we have like for each possible answer, expect contains that. If we run this test, that's going to happen. We shouldn't see those answers in there, right? Okay. So the compilation failed actually. So it probably means that I have like I've done stuff. Read the question. Oh, it's probably that. Yeah. And okay, so there we go. So we're not actually rendering an answer for each one of those. One thing that I really miss that like PHP unit has, but like JS does not, is I really wish I could add a second parameter in here that is like a reasonable error message, but we can't do that at this moment. So expected true received false sucks, but that's what we gotta do at this point. I saw some people doing the assertions with like an object with the reason behind. That's a solution for it. I'm not gonna be doing this at this point. But yeah, so how we're gonna get this test to pass, right? So all we have to do is just, we're gonna have a button for each possible answer, right? And for those that are used with Vue, best practices dictates that whenever using before, you should have a key. And the easiest way out is by having like an index for the loop itself, with the key. And possible answers is not defined, right? So we have to define that. And this, to me, is a clear example of a computed property. So to implement computed properties in Vue TypeScript, all you have to do is to implement a getter. So I'm just going to say get possible answers. And as a getter, you shouldn't have parameters in it. And this guy is going to return a string array. And what are possible answers? It's just this, trivia, incorrect answers. And okay, so now we come to that discussion of, is the correct answer always going to be in the end? So I'm not going to be testing the randomization in itself, but we can definitely like implement like a quick randomization in here. If you want to do like possible answers is equals. So for now, I'm just going to throw all those things in here, right? And then I'm going to do possible answers dot splice. And what I'm going to do in here, I'm going to inject the correct answer in a random position, whatever. So let's just call this like index of right answer. Also, I personally like to extract stuff into constants a lot. I feel like that makes the code easier to read. So what is the index of right answer? So it's going to be a math floor of math random. So math random returns a number that is up to 1, doesn't include 1. Math random of this of possible answers at this point dot length. Okay. So possible answer, so if you have like 3 possible answers this guy is going to return a maximum number of 2, which happens to be the most external index, so it works perfectly for us. So all I'm going to do is going to be like, hey, let's inject an index of possible of right answer, deleting 0 things. We're going to add this trivia correct answer. So this is kind of like a little bit of JavaScript magic, but I'm literally creating a temporary array, injecting the correct answer in a random place, and then returning that as the possible answers. So we just have like a possible answers in a random location. Okay, so for each answer, we're gonna have a text in this button that has the answer, and as I was explaining earlier, I'm gonna have like this meta content in here that also happens to have the answer, just so we can actually fetch in there. Because sadly, the test you choose doesn't have a way to find like the text itself. Okay, so if you run that, then that's our test. So now we have a button for each answer. We can look at this at the app, like.
Sorry. So where are we looking for possible answers keyword?
No. So the possible answers thing is part of the implementation. We don't look for the possible answers. We are looking for a button that has that content. That's it. We don't care about variable names. We don't care about like if we're using computed properties or not. We're just looking, hey, I hope that Vue component is going to have a button that has this text. For each possible answer, I hope to see that. So yeah, like the test shouldn't know about the implementation.
Key as the possible answer.
Sorry?
Value. So instead of creating a content for it, you can use the key value. And instead of the key value being the index, use the key value as the possible answer.
Oh, yes. That is sweet. Yeah, we can definitely do that. That's a really cool solution. Let's see if that works. You know, like I've always been using like numbers for the keys, but that's a very sweet solution. Thank you for sharing that. That's so we can definitely search for a thing that has a key possible answer, right? That should work. Like I would be surprised if it doesn't. I hope it does. Oh, dang. I wonder if key
will not render.
Key doesn't render, right? Okay, yeah, so that's fine. So the key doesn't render. So because key is just a thing that Vue uses to keep track of the multiple elements that are being created on the loop. So that's a bummer. That would that would be sweet.
Something like data, reduce data attribute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is pretty much what we're doing, but we're calling that content. But I like, yeah, data attributes or like any other sort of like metadata that you can look into on your tests. But yeah, so we have this, right? How much time do I have left? How is?
It's 7:27.
Because I might need to actually go for going over quickly on the other test because. So this is fun. Like I actually did this thing going through like explaining what I was doing multiple times, but when you're getting the real thing, it actually ends up taking longer.
I would say we'll probably keep going on what you've got planned for it, and then we'll break around. So we've got plenty of time afterwards, and we can kind of massage the solution.
Not everybody needs to stay for the trivia game.
Okay.
But your presentation is more important.
Okay, right, sweet, thank you. So I'm just gonna commit this, and let's call this then, it's render answer button for all possible answers. Okay, no, I actually went over the amount of characters now. Okay, so our component is getting in shape, right? And if you guys wanna see the real thing, like I'm just gonna quickly use the fake trivia question. I'm just going to show this thing over here in our app, just so we can see it. So if I go to the app.view, just for now. Okay, this is not actually real implementation. It's just so we can see the component in here. And I'm gonna have a trivia question in here as a child component that has trivia, trivia. And okay, so we should see like a single question being rendered in the app. Am I running the builder? Oh yeah, it is. Okay, so there we go. So we can see the question. What is a test question? Incorrect answer, and you can see the correct answer. I have a feeling that this is the right answer. So if we click in here, you can see nothing happens. We don't have any event handlers going on. Okay, all right. Yeah, it's pretty sweet because we, oh, oops, I have to refresh the data. So let's just start this. And it should be able, okay. So the Vue testing tools is very buggy on the browser. So you can see over here, like the possible answer showing up, to the question right here. So this is the image. And the correct answer is not in the end, it's in a random place, which is very nice.
First question, if you wanted to just quickly throw in Bootstrap or something, would it load it on the spot, or do you have to refresh?
So if you're installing extra libraries, you have to restart the watch. Yeah. Okay, so, all right. Let's go for the next requirement, because like one of the things that we need to see in here is, hey, if I click on the right answer, the component should inform its parent that, hey, the user clicked on the right answer, right? And we should probably offer a visual feedback as well. So how are we gonna enforce this? So a really cool thing that I like in JSON, also I'm gonna move this guy to inside of this function, and there's no need there's no need to use like the old fashioned thing. Let's just say like this. Oh, jeez, over here, just like a inline fat arrow function in here, just so it's only related to this test, so there is no
It's the one line and it's
inside.
only done with the.
I can get rid of this parenthesis, this brace. Yeah, but if I get rid of this, it's going to go over 120. So I prefer to have the brace with one line and respect the 120 characters. Okay, so this is one cool thing about Jest and Mocha as well. A bunch of testing libraries do that, but you can actually, like again, like this, we're telling a story. Like, what are the responsibilities of this component? So you can literally change another described in here, and you can say like, when the user clicks on the answer, so when the user clicks on an answer, what do I expect? It emits an answer correct event if the user selected a right answer. There we go. So you can see like this guy, this test suite is telling a story. When the user clicks on the answer, what's going to happen? It emits the answer correct, and I'm actually going to do the question answer incorrect in here as well. Incorrect event if you click select a wrong answer. All right. So how are we going to do this? And again, it's cool because we have the content metadata, right? So we can make our test really readable on that. So we can say like incorrect answer, and what's this going to be? It's going to be a trivia. Incorrect answer is just at the first one, and there we go. And then I'm going to do wrapper. Find the first button that you can see in which the content is going to. Oh, come on, I didn't use template strings again. That's like 2 times in a row. Okay, so find content that has the incorrect answer and trigger a click on it. So I'm pretending to be a user clicking on an incorrect answer. Sweet. So what do I expect to happen then? Because as you're like if you're used with testing, you know that usually you should have the text structured in 3 areas. You have setup, execution, and assertions, right? So the setup is in the before each. The execution is happening right now. I'm clicking on the button, and now I'm going to have the assertion. That is, I expect wrapper emitted answer. Oh, did I put that in an answer correct? Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm just going to do an answer incorrect in here, and I'm going to flip those things on. Okay. Wrapper emitted answer incorrect to be true key. Okay, so I'm expecting answer incorrect to have been emitted from that component. And likewise, because those tests are so similar, I'm just going to put another one in here, and this is going to be a correct answer. And the correct answer happens to be correct answer. And I will expect to emit to answer correct. And if I run the test, what's going to happen? We should see 2 failing tests. So it hasn't emitted an event. Emitted is actually going to return the payload of the event. Actually, it's even more than that. It's going to return every single instance of, like every single time that that event was emitted with the respective payloads. If the event was never emitted, you're going to get undefined, which is a falsy value. So that's why I was expecting the value to be truthy. I got a falsy value, so the test failed. So how we can make that pass, right? So we're going to need to handle the click event. And I love Vue because it's so readable, man. Like you can literally say like, hey, at click, what's going to happen at click? So it should read like English, right? So it should be like, hey, evaluate answer, and pass the answer to this guy. And what is evaluate answer? So let's just do it here, private, evaluate answer, and this guy doesn't return anything. And so what is evaluate answer? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see if the answer is right. If the answer is right, I'm going to emit the event. So I'm going to just call it, hey, event name, it's going to be a string, and then I'm going to ask, hey, is answer equals to right answer? Again, maybe this is like over abstraction, but I like to have right answer like in here, string, and it just return this previous.
Just go with the correct thing, maybe that's really correct. Yeah.
Correct answer, yeah. Okay. Hey, if answer is the correct answer, this is over abstraction. I'm just going to put this in here. So if answer is equal correct answer, so what's going to happen? So the event name, if it is correct, I'm going to call answer correct. If it's false, I'm going to call answer incorrect. Is that what I call it? Answer incorrect. Also, I can see what the test name is. Okay, so answer correct and answer incorrect, and then I want to emit this event. All right, so pretty straightforward implementation. So if we go to the test, and we run the test again, hopefully it's going to work. Please work. I would appreciate it if it did. And there we go. So the test passed. So now the component is informing the parent whether or not the user selected the right answer. Oh, do you want to? So let's take a look. So you want to like extract this thing or what?
No, in the tests you have a lot of code smells. So in your find, I think it has to be factored out. You have three places. You have a dependency on implementation or find. That should be done in one place. So when you change if you decide instead of content you're going to use some other word, you do it in one place, right?
That's a good point. So maybe this function over here, instead of being responsible to doing like the whole expect, I think what I'm actually going to do is going to be one find answer button or something like that, and then I can use that. That's a great protector. So yeah, so let's just do that. So I'm just going to do const find answer button. Actually, I'm going to have this thing.
It could be part of this.
Yeah. So it's just like a find answer button, and what this thing is going to do, it's just going to do return wrapper. Oh, it actually should take answer string, and it's going to return a wrapper of. And I know this is going to look weird, but it technically returns the wrapper of the component, even though you're actually going into the button. It's not a wrapper of the button itself. It's interesting, but yeah. So so I'm going to return a wrapper dot find, and it's going to be that guy over here. And yeah, that's a good point. That was like a code smell because I was repeating that in multiple places. So let's just put this guy over here, and that's all this guy's going to return. And then I can come to this place over here, and I feel like this could just be expect find answer button for possible answer. Exists should be true. Right? And this expect contains no longer needs to exist. And then this guy over here, I'm actually going to try to do some black magic here. So let's just do this, and then I'm going to click find answer button. Oh no, wait. Okay, cool. And for that guy, an each for all the incorrect answers. That's a good point. I mean, we could account for the incorrect answers in here as well. Oh yeah, that's a good point. We could use that.
Anyway, that's beside the point.
Yeah, let's keep going. So I'm gonna say like init event that describes if user selected a right answer or right or wrong.
Again, correct or incorrect, because you use that.
That is true. Switch, correct. Right, so we got that. Okay, that's good. So now let's go for the feature text. Oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering we'll find the answer button works if there is a double quotes inside the answers.
Ooh, let's see that. That's a really good point. Let's see that. If this would. So I want to throw a double quote in here, right? Like, you think that would break the thing?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh snap. Okay, this is true. Okay. So this is a good point. So maybe the approach of using content was not ideal.
Because it will probably be escaped by some weird HTML entities.
That is true. And I mean, like, we have to remember that we have control over what is the actual content, and that find is only being used in the test. So we just need to make sure that the fake data that we're using for the test doesn't have the quotation marks in it. Huh?
Metrics should solve the problem. Because you can say...
But the selector from Vue test choose uses CSS selectors. So it's like CSS selectors. But yeah, like this is true. But this is not a concern of this test though. Like I feel like because we are literally only using that find in the test, so it's okay. Like having quotes in the question or the answer will not break production. We'll render the quotes, and that even explains why the thing broke, because we're actually rendering the quotes in production. So this is fine. Like, this is not a thing that we should be worried about. Okay, so I'm gonna go now for a feature test, just to show you guys how, hey, let's make sure that we're actually loading the questions from that public API, right? Okay, so let's just go to, I'm gonna update my JS regex to allow feature tests in here. So I'm just gonna say, hey, it's gonna be unit or feature, and for my tests, I'm going to create a directory called feature, and in here I'm going to create an app.spec.ts, and this is where we're actually going to do like a feature test for the app. So okay, let's describe the app, and let's say.
So you don't create feature files, you just create spec files?
It's always spec. I think it looks for .spec or .test.js. You have full control over this though. You can see over here. Oh, it actually, for now, it's only looking for spec. But I could say like, hey, I want my test to have taco salad.js. Full control. So let's just say like it. So what do we expect from the app? It starts with the very first question.
Bigger font?
From the Trigger API. Sorry?
Bigger font?
Bigger.
Oh yeah. So this is what we expect the app to be doing. It should start with the very first question from the Trigger API. Sweet. So how we're going to account for that, right? So this is where Axios mock adapter comes into play. Because we, like, sure, we could be talking to the real Trivia API, but then our test suite wouldn't run if we didn't have internet connection. And if you're using like a service that actually charges you for each request, like your test suite is going to be running a whole lot of times. So best practices dictates that you should be faking your external API. Okay, so how we're going to be doing that? So we're going to be using Axios mock adapter. So I'm just going to pause the watcher in here, and I'm going to add Axios, because that's what we're going to be using to actually talk to the API, and Axios mock adapter. And because we're going to be using promises, we also have to wait for the promises to be resolved. So we're going to be using flush promises in our tests. So those three together should, oh, the flush promises I missed up. It's actually flush promises. I pressed F11. Okay, so flush promises should keep this.
I know there is Sagas. Have you used Sagas for
I looked into Sagas a long time ago, but I haven't used it. So let's just const wrapper. It's a nuisance. It's a wrapper of our app. And as I was explaining earlier, because this is a feature test, I suggest using a full mount. We want the real components being interacting together. So we're gonna mount this app, and it doesn't take any props. And okay, so what we expect to happen, right? We still need to implement the fake API, right? So I'm just gonna go, like, I'm going to pretend to be this thing. So let's just const mock, I'm just gonna call it trigger API, which is gonna be a mock adapter. And this guy is gonna be a new mock adapter of Axios. I have to put Axios in here. Axios from Axios. So, okay, so this is like, the mock adapter is gonna take over, and the request that happens via Axios are actually gonna be talking to whatever endpoints I'm implementing with the Axios mock adapter. So here's what I'm gonna say, like, hey, any GET request that comes to this URL in here, what I wanna do is you're gonna reply with something. So, and this is another good thing, like you could write tests that says like, hey, if the service is timing out, what is your app supposed to do, right? I'm not gonna go over this in here because of the time constraint. I'm gonna just write the test for the happy path. So we're receiving a status 200, and we should receive the response from the API. So how are we gonna be doing that response? So we should have fixtures in here. So I'm just gonna create like a folder called fixtures. And in here, I'm gonna make a Trivia API GET response. It's gonna be a JSON file, and the JSON file is gonna be exactly this thing. There we go. So it's just like a real response that you get from that actual thing. Okay, so I want to have an interface to represent this response as well. So let's just go to types again, and I'm going to create a new interface that's going to represent that. So let's say Trivia API GET response. Export interface Trivia API GET response, and we know that that thing has like a response code of type string, and then it has like results which of type Trivia array, right? Like if you remember how this thing behaves, like you just have a response code with an, oh, it's a number actually, and then results with an array of trivia questions, right? So this is what we're going to be doing here. So where's the trivia response? There's a number, and this. So now I'm going to go to the index, update that to have the trivia API response. And in our test, I'm going to take the response of it. So what's going to be the response of this thing, right? So that response is going to be an iTrivia API get response. That's going to have a response code of 0 and results. It's going to be, let's just return like a, oh, what am I doing? Like, I could just add a fixture. I have the fixture there, so let's just import that. Import. So the way you import JSON in TypeScript is it's like you import star as the variable that's going to contain that JSON. So let's just call this as API get response fixture from, and then I want to go to fixtures. I don't know why it's not auto-completing, but it should be. Okay. Okay, so the get response is actually going to be this thing. Okay, so because we're type hinting, we can see that we should be able to access. Oh, not the response code. If I go to results, I should be able to see question, correct answer. Yeah, there we go. So everything is type hinted, right? That's a good thing about TypeScript. But okay, so what we expect this guy to return is like, or sorry, not what we expect. What we're gonna be returning with this mod is gonna be the get response, right? So every request that happens to this endpoint is gonna receive a reply of 200 status code with the contents of this fixture over here. Okay? All right. So what we expect this to do, like, the first question. So we mount this thing, and because we're handling promises, we have to wait for the promises to resolve. So I'm just going to make this test async, and I'm going to be awaiting for flush promises.
Are you going to take some wait time or?
So I'm going to be faking the wait time on the next test. That's going to be like when you answer the question, you have to wait 1 second to go for the next one. Flush promises is going to ensure that the promises are going to be resolved handled, either as results or as rejects. But yeah. So let's import flush promises from flush promises. I don't know.
It can't generate that import for you.
Yeah, like it generated, but it is required for some reason. Did you see that? Like I was like, why? Yeah.
It's probably only exporting as common JS module with package JSON.
I see.
Yeah, you need to change your default in package JSON.
No, that package I'm saying. Flush promises probably doesn't export like a module or a DSNX property in package JSON, so whatever is bundling it in.
I see.
Assumes that it's a node module and not.
It's interesting, but this thing is gonna fail. Oh, sorry. And not only that, because that question is encoded, so we actually expect to see the decoded version of that. I really don't like the name of this function, but for those that are not familiar, so base64 encoding is a really neat way for you to encode any sort of information as an ASCII string. So you can encode a picture, MP3s. So this function, the name of this function stands from ASCII to binary. So you're going from the base64 encoded version into the real version. And to base64 encode, it's B2A. So you're going from binary to ASCII. I personally would prefer the function to be called base64 encode and base64 decode. But
does this also support UTF?
Sorry?
Does this support UTF encoding?
I don't know.
That would be a problem because like if you're rendering anything that is UTF like character that shows emojis or whatever, you're going to be in trouble there.
Oh, yeah. I really don't know. That's a good point. But okay, so we expect this thing to be decoded, right? So let's run the test and let's see what we get. So our app is actually right now using a fake question. So we should be able to see, yeah, so there you go. So what we have is what is this test question, which is that fake question that we hard-coded into our app. And what we actually got from the trivia, from the fake trivia API is what is the first of output each calcs move is to be filmed in column. So there you go. So the test is failing, and we need to make that thing pass. So let's go to the app. And you can see here, let's just, I no longer want this private string in here. And Vue has lifecycle hooks. There's the mounted one, and there's the created, there's like after created, like there's a bunch of lifecycle hooks that you can look into. The difference between mounted and created is that like created, the component exists already, but hasn't actually attached itself into the DOM. And mounted is like the component is fully connected to the DOM and ready to go. In the case of like loading questions from an API, we can use the created, right? So let's just say private, created, and all I want to do in this guy is load questions, okay? And what is load questions? Private async load questions. So because this is async, this guy is going to return a promise. And what are we going to do in here? So we're going to await for access. Just do this. So let's just import.
Is the promise of void that's necessarily?
Sorry?
What is the promise? Is it the promise of void?
Yeah, like it's up to me, right? Like whatever this function is going to be returning, this function is not going to return anything, so it's a promise of void. But if this async function would result into a number, it would be a promise of a number. You see? So yeah, this is like this is sort of like a template type engine, right? So we're gonna await for Axios to get, and then in here, like we could, because we're gonna have that same big string in two different places, we could have that like in a different file. For the sake of time, let's just copy this string. So we're gonna make a GET request to that endpoint. And again, because we're using TypeScript, we can actually type hint the return of this Axios call. So I can say, I expect to receive back an iTrivia API GET response. And why speech please not get thank you. So, okay, so response equals this.
Is it still using your fixture though?
No, oh, I mean, in the test, it will. In production, it's going to talk to the real thing. Because Axios mock adapter is actually mocking Axios in the test.
Is it
Yeah.
overriding the constructor?
Sorry?
Is it overriding the constructor for Axios then?
I'm not 100% sure how Axios mock adapter works. So. But, so, and then also, like, because we're using async await, like, it's usually best to have this in a try-catch block. And for now, you would do whatever if the call didn't work.
Can't you just use that other module that you were using with the flush promise system?
The flush promises, like, because this is a single promise, right?
Mm.
This await is going to do that. This await is going to wait for this thing to be resolved or rejected. So we don't have to use flush promises here. Flush promises is more like a test tool, in my opinion. Like, even if you want to wait for every single promise to be resolved, you probably are going to be using promise.all to wait for all the promises to be resolved. But yeah. Okay, so we have like this response in here, and again, because we're using TypeScript, you can see that this entire response object is type printed. So we can go, okay, let's go to data, and what do we get in data? Oh, we get results and response code, and if we go to results 0, what do we get? Questions and types and
So
difficulties.
it's just loading is based on the model that you're providing it, or is it going to the actual API and loading?
No, it's based on the interface. Because I'm saying that this promise is going to be resolved into that interface, yeah. So, okay, so we have that, right? But then again, like, this is not going to be enough, right? So if we do, let's just say, private questions, and this is going to be like an iTrivia array that starts empty, and then when this guy is resolved, we can say iQuestions equals response.data.results. This won't make the test pass because this is still encoded, right? So I'm just going to show it here. So let's just say, I only want to render this component if we have questions, of course. And then the trivia is going to be questions at 0. So this, we're still gonna fail because even though we're actually getting the question is gonna be encoded. Property question from the point. Questions, what line did I fail? Line 36?
Supposed to go list of questions, not questions, right?
In the template, the this is implied. Questions, with array. Can I get questions? Here, questions, trivia, get questions. I'm actually curious about why that's happening. Like, what I'm gonna do, like, just in case, like, I'm gonna do like a private get current question, and this guy is either gonna return an iTrivia or no, and I'm gonna say if these questions are like equal 0, you're gonna return no. Otherwise, you're going to return these questions 0. So I'm always going to return the first question. That's you guys' first test to pass. And what are we going to get? Because I think this guy was, yeah, it's still trying to do it regardless. Even though I'm using, that's interesting. I can definitely, like, I notice this should work if okay, so I think the array was being truthy. I thought an empty array was falsy. I might be mixing stuff with PHP. Is that, an empty array in PHP is falsy and an empty array in JavaScript is truthy? Because
as long as something has been instantiated, it's truthy in JavaScript.
Yeah, exactly. Because like it has all the prototype functions in it. Exactly.
As long as it's an object, it's true.
Exactly, yeah. So it was my mistake. Like I kept mixing PHP and JavaScript.
Unless it's the null.
Huh? Sorry?
If it's an object, it's true unless it's the null.
Yeah, okay. So now you can see that we're failing for the reason that I was expecting. We're not decoding the thing. So I personally, I'm inclined to use a map to decode this. So I'm just gonna do like map with decode question. And what is decode question? So I'm just gonna make a map in here. Decode question. And what is this thing? This is the thing that takes a encoded question. And it's going to return another retriever that's going to be the decoded question. And this is going to be pretty much, so it has to respect the interface, right? So if you go take a look at the iTrivia, it's going to be something like this. You need to have all those things. Go back in here. Just back in here. So what we want to do in here? So we know that the category is going to be, actually, I think that you can use this thing over here to autocomplete it. So it's going to be encoded question dot whatever the other guy was, wrapped within a, it's going to be an ASCII and it's going to take 2 binary. Yeah. So wrapped within an HTTP, but this is not enough because this guy is actually an array. So this guy is going to be different. So this guy is actually going to be another map within the map because it's an array. So incorrect answers is going to be encoded question dot incorrect answers dot map with an encoded incorrect answer. So string, and we return an HTTP of that. This is looking a little bit gross. Let's push this map down. Does it look better? Not really, but okay. So we have like a decoding function in here that's going to run over the whole thing. So let's just call this decode. Oh, it's already there. So if we run the test.
You want to maybe convert all of that into like a function so that you don't have to have A to B written all over the place?
But A to B is a function though.
Yeah, but like you can just like do a for each loop and
oh, for each key?
yeah, for each key and then go for it.
In this case, I personally, like, if this was a client project, I prefer this because I feel like this is more explicit and readable, even though the for each key
But
would
the
go over all the
concern,
keys.
the concern of A to B is different from the concern of decodation. These are two different concerns. In some future event, you might need to do some other functionality that does the decoding. And if you have multiple places that need to be modified, then it's more likely for you to be making mistakes. Whereas if you're delegating the concern of A to B to its own function and only call it once, then if you need to change anything within that functionality, it only handles that bit.
That's a fair point. So like, it would be like decoding method being called by the decoded function. That's a fair point. Like, the responsibility of decoding the thing, yeah, that's a good point. You could have like the
Even that A
decoding
to B, even that A
function.
to B, if you create a syntactic
yeah.
sugar, call it like decode,
Yeah,
and then call that decode, then that's good.
like this.
You
Yeah.
could do a lot of things with it too, like you could have a encoded, encoded response type class that does get method on that does AT from that way return it or like an AT. There's a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't personally worry about it too much for now, but.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's what you meant, right?
Yeah.
That's definitely a good point. But yeah, like Lucas was saying, and the tests are passing, so that should be good to go. I think we're like pretty rough on time, so I'm gonna be showing you guys this thing. So can you go to the other screen, please? Yes, great. Okay, so let's just try to. So this is just like the demonstration trigger game that I did like yesterday, just to show you the talk. Like, and because we are using like Electron, it's very easy to have like a custom icon, of course, and the game is it's actually on this screen. It's just doing that. So again, it's just that same thing, and if you look into the tests, you're gonna be able to see. So this is the actual place where I wrote the program yesterday. One test that I want to show you guys that I think it's important is this one over here. Loads the next question 1 second after the previous question has been answered. And you can see over here that this pre-assertion over here is debatable. I personally I feel like I should remove that because we already have this assertion being done in here. But I click on a possible answer, and then instead of actually waiting 1 second, I just use the jest mock timer to pretend that 1 second has elapsed. So if I run this test over here, you should be able to see that that test is going to take less than 50 milliseconds to run. You should see that in here, and you can see it takes 37 milliseconds. I don't remember if it's Jest or Mocha that starts throwing warnings as soon as your tests take over 150 milliseconds. So, like, you're not going to wait 1 second for real, right? And you can see like this time being elapsed is actually fully effective. I'm going to wait just 600 milliseconds now, and the test should fail because the next question is not going to be loaded. So this is a pretty neat way to see. So you will still like on the before.
So I'm guessing there's a set timeout somewhere where you're waiting, like.
There is a set timeout, and this works with intervals as well. Like I can show you guys. So this so there's like on both correct answers and incorrect answers, I just go to a generic on question answered because of the workshop. And like one of the reasons we're having different behaviors for those guys. But you can see like on question answered, I do a timeout of 1 second to increment the correct question index. Okay?
Can you extract that into like a variable that you can then set?
Yeah. We were working today on a project as a mob, and we did pretty much the same test in there. And yeah, in real code, you'll definitely extract this into the settings, right? Like settings file, which would be like, hey, what is the waiting time until the next question is loaded? And then both the test and the application would do that.
Would you do that in like a package of JSON, or would you do it?
I would create a settings JS or something like that, but I don't have a strong opinion. Like if a member of the team wanted to have in the package JSON, I would probably be okay with that. I've never done it like settings in the package JSON background.
I would keep notes. You gotta hit the package based on that.
So you would put in the package JSON?
No, I wouldn't put it.
Oh, you wouldn't? Okay.
I'd probably keep it inside, but I don't get that much.
Okay.
For our project, but based on what they use it, or.
Question. Are these running in the headless version of Electron.js, or is this in some emulated JS DOM thing?
Sorry?
Are these running in some headless
Yeah,
browser?
yeah.
or are
It
they-
runs in a Chromium browser.
Okay, so it's not like emulated in a DOM 3.
No, like
It's not. Okay.
Yeah. It's all Chromium.
Okay.
Yeah. So even like for example, if you want to know whether or not we have internet connection, you would go to navigator.connected or is connected.
Do you know, I think, do you mean the tests, right?
Yeah, the test. Yeah.
The tests are running on JS DOM.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. The tests are running just
Oh,
now. Yes.
okay. Can you? Okay. Well, I guess there is an option to make it headless browser somewhere.
It's much slower, but you get, with Jest, I don't even think it's possible.
I would use the Selenium WebDriver if you want to actually
No,
run
but
a
the problem for me is if I use web components, I actually need the browser's engine to render the components for me, right? If I'm testing a component, and JS DOM doesn't emulate so far the components.
I mean, like the Vue components, like so this test over here is rendering all the Vue components, right? And it's still working fine with just DOM.
It depends on the framework.
Yeah, so web components actually need the browser engine to test the software.
What might be interesting if you use a tech called Vue, and you can hook it up to Jest. And it's kind of an interoperable, so you can run a headless browser up to your web-breaker test engine.
Okay. So, just bring this back in here. So what I wanted to propose is I have this Electron game in here, which pretty much has like the same features with one little exception is that I actually show the colors of the right answer and the incorrect answer as you click. But this is in KWJS-electron-trivia on Far Floor. And I'm just asking for either a feature or bug fix, and whoever is interested in doing that, like, free to do so. And it's just like showing the score after all the questions has been like answered, or like I intentionally left a bug into the application that we just every time the question is answered, I just increment the index by 1. But we only load 10 questions. Like you can see over here, the amount is 10 questions. So eventually you're gonna try to load question 11, which doesn't exist. And that should pretty much just mean that nothing's gonna show. There we go. You're in limbo now, right? So there is like this small bug in the application, or the feature of having an end screen, which would also solve the bug. So whatever you prefer. And just giving credit to the artist, this is where I got that icon for the app. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.
I don't, I think we do have some time, like I'm not sure what time we're gonna close up or anything here, but it is probably a little bit later than we were thinking, so I was thinking one option would be if people wanted to forecast the repo, and then we could like drop it in the meetup to make some time for the next meetup and just say, hey, what did you guys get a chance to do, if anyone did anything with it?
Great.
Otherwise we can do whatever the plan is for next month, so. But yeah, we are, what is it, we're at 8 or so right now. I think we'll probably stick around until 9-ish or so. I go to bed at 9:30, so I don't know how much I get that later now. That's true. But yeah, so we're gonna stick around here. If anybody wants to work on it, we can kind of roll around and chat that way. And if we want to continue work afterwards, then we'll just make sure that you're here next month.
Oh, yeah, definitely. was great.
All right, and yeah, thanks again for Vehicle and Chris and Tim, who's no longer here at the concert tonight, and Philippe for speaking, and all of you for coming. And yeah, I don't know, do we have a deadline for announcing class for next month yet? We'll figure it out soon. Yeah.
No, I don't know if you're anything yet.
We'll try and chat soon and get the topic of it from there. And I won't ask right now for requests, but if anyone wants to drop it on meetup, I think a couple of people did talk React Native as like a RSVP a while back. Is anyone interested in seeing me do that? Me? Okay. I work with React Native all day, so we can always do a React Native presentation. But other than that, yeah. Great. So we will keep it around at least till 9 o'clock tonight. So if anyone wants to keep the computer open and mess around, you're more than welcome to. We're here to chat. Thanks again for coming.
Cool. Very good.